presenter screen and the slides for today. Next, just so you know, down at the lower right corner, if you would like to move or drag the viewing window, that's where you would click. There is a control panel where you can interact with us on your end. Clicking the arrows on the Grab tab will open it up and also closes the control panel. Then we have an audio pane where you'll find the audio information. If you've joined over with voice over IP today, you'll be listening on your speakers. If you've joined via telephone, be sure to enter your audio pin onto your telephone keypad now. You can communicate with us at any time throughout today's webinar using the question box. Click on the hand icon on the Grab tab, and that will raise or lower your hand to let us know you've got something to say or you've got a question. And finally, in the View menu, uncheck Auto Hide the Control Panel if you'd like the control panel to remain open throughout today's session. We would love for you to actively participate today. So this questions panel in your line of communication is your line of communication directly with our presenters and myself. So please contribute today as we go through. Submit your questions and comments while we talk. We'll make sure to address anything that comes up for you during the Q&A session at the end. We do have a big crowd today, so I assure you that we will address any unanswered questions via email if we don't have time to discuss it on the call. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive an email with a link to the recorded session tomorrow, so no need to take notes. You can leave it to us to fill you in and get you up to speed on the PEA. I'm going to hand you over now to our presenters, Dr. Jean Norris and Shannon Gormley.
Thank you so much, Beth, and welcome to all of our attendees. It's great to see so many of you out there with us today. My name is Shannon Gormley, and I am the National Director of Enrollment Solutions for Norton Norris Incorporated. And as I look at our attendees, I see that there's quite a few familiar names out there, so I'm really excited to have the opportunity to connect with you via webinar. Just a little bit about my background quickly. I come from an admissions background. I have had opportunities working as an admissions advisor all the way up through to an executive director in both for-profit and not-for-profit industries or not-for-profit schools. But more importantly, and this is what I'm really excited about, is I'm also a licensed school counselor. And so it's been really good to work with Norton Norris and Jean on how do we incorporate some of those techniques and tools from the world of counseling into what we do as admissions professionals. And so we'll be bringing in a lot of that information during today's webinar, especially when we talk about pre-enrollment advising and the idea of helping a student to determine their best fit. So that's a little bit about what I'm bringing to the table, but I would like to hand it over to my partner in crime, Dr. Jean Norris. Welcome.
Hi there, and hello everybody across the country and Rico and Canada. It'd be so great to have you all with us today. And a little about my background is obviously, admissions is at the heart and soul of everything that I do. Love, love, love the world of admissions. And also a lot of my training and experience is in the world of organizational development. So as we look at the organizations that are working with students and the things that go on in any school or college, I'm going to bring a lot of that to the table today, besides the admissions piece, of course, which, working in for-profit and nonprofit colleges and universities, there's a lot of things that we want to bring to the table related to how we can move the profession of admissions and what we do with our students to a much higher level. So that's the focus, a little about our background. And some specifics for today, we're going to talk about the value of the admissions interview. And I know this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, as we've been doing this thing for a long, long time. So we're going to talk more about the value of that recruitment technique. We're also going to talk about some reasons to adapt what we're doing, moving forward with the PEA, or pre-enrollment advising. And then what can we do, or what can you do when we get off this webinar today to actually go back and make an impact? That's really what we want to see, is how you can go back and make an impact on your organization, on your profession, as well as for those students, right? So let's begin with the value of the admissions interview. And again, this is something that's been around for at least 30 years that I recall working in the industry, is the admissions interview has really been the thing, right? And it has a typical framework. And for those schools out there that are on the call today that aren't using the admissions interview, these are the typical things that you see, right? There's the rapport or the warm-up. Hey, how's the weather? Love your time. Can I get you some water, a little coffee, right? Let me get to know you. Then there's the probing phase. This is where we ask a bunch of questions. We might have an interrogation. I'm sorry, did I say interrogation? We might have a probing form or a questionnaire that we use in admissions to get all this information. The third piece is identifying what might be in that prospective student's way in terms of enrolling in school, right? So what are those obstacles, and how can we help them overcome those things? So it's a great piece of typical admissions interview. Trial closes, again, a term that's been used that very much will test or check in with the student to just see where they're at. Are they following me, right? And information giving, of course, this is a big part of the job of admissions, is let me give you all the pieces of information, data, compliance-related things that you need to help you make an informed decision. The best admissions interviews also include a tour. Let me take you around. If it's a virtual environment, let me show you. Let me have you experience what it might be like. Of course, we're always a fan of making sure that people are given cost and all the details related to financial aid options, followed by what was called, or what has been called, the close, or the idea of application or enrollment agreement. A best practice is to also ask for a referral and to follow up. Okay, so 101 stuff, but this is typically the strategy of the admissions interviews right here. So for those of you who haven't used it. So on the call today, we have so many folks, so super excited about that. And we asked a question when you registered for today's webinar: does your school or college currently use an admissions interview as part of your strategy? And of course, a majority of you did. And I think it was 92% actually said that you are using the admissions interview. The other question was, do you believe it has a positive impact on student retention? And 86% of you said that you thought that it did, which is interesting. And do you believe it is effective in securing quality enrollments? Well, this stat was a little interesting. So although 92% of you on the call or who registered today said that you are using it, only 66% believe that it's actually effective the way that it's currently being used. So I think that's a great start and a great setup. And kudos to all of you out there who are doing this work day to day that understand that it has worked. A lot of schools are using it, but perhaps there's some opportunity here to do something a little bit differently, right? But let's begin with the pros, because honestly, we wouldn't have been doing an admissions interview if there weren't an upside to this, right? So first and foremost, the admissions interview is a great tool for building relationships, right? And the people who work in admissions, the energy they have, the excitement they bring, those cheerleaders for the organization are the ones who are building that relationship from the get-go. So there's a big positive there. You can learn more about the prospective student. Absolutely. It's key to understand where they're coming from, what are their motivations, what might be holding them back, how can I help you? A big plus. That one-on-one attention, especially for the career colleges that are on the call with us today, the amount of time and attention that is provided to prospective students from career colleges is something that we haven't seen in other sectors of higher education. And there's some reasons for that in terms of resources that we'll talk about a little later. But it is a big plus of the admissions interview approach. Obviously, when you have a framework or an approach, it does allow management to measure productivity and effectiveness. So whether it's working or not is a whole other story, but knowing what people are spending their time on and how it's working well and where the opportunities are for improvement is something that's another plus. And of course, getting those referrals of other people who might want to go through the same process is another great advantage of the admissions interview. So let's take a look at the other side of the coin. as we look at admissions interviews, what might be some of the downsides related to it? Well, one of the things when we talk about the traditional admissions interview is the folks that are doing the job. And believe me, Shannon and I have been those people. We have supervised those people. We continue to work with people who work in admissions. However, the training that a lot of people have is not the same, and that's okay. It's just a reality. It's not the same as an experienced counselor or someone who has a master's degree in guidance. There's a big difference. So that experience has limitations. The approaches that have been used to get enrollments or that have been used primarily on the Career College side have actually been considered in some cases misleading or high pressure. And we're going to show you some of the recent headlines related to that shortly. And for those of you who haven't had a chance to view the PBS documentary that was done last week, you'll see some of those same techniques were highlighted, unfortunately, in that documentary. The other thing is there's no scientific proof that it helps with retention. Although our intent on the front end of doing the admissions interview is to get that student to think things through, to come up with a plan B. What if it doesn't work out? What are you going to do? But there's no scientific proof that actually helps with retention, the approaches we're using on the front end. So something further to investigate and take a look at. And again, another aspect here of the cons related to the admissions interview is it requires a lot of time. And when you think about the amount of time that all of you are spending in the admissions office, working with students, we did ask that in our registration questions. And I thought it was interesting that 61% of you are saying, this is 45 minutes to an hour with each student. Again, from the Career College perspective, they do a great job. Career colleges do a great job of dedicating resources to help these students figure things out. And yet it is very time intensive when you really look at it. Some schools are actually spending, an hour, hour and a half, and more. So it is a big resource allocation. Okay. As we continue to look at the cons, and I mentioned some of these things, it's just an awareness that we want to bring to your attention is some of the techniques that have been used in admissions interviewing actually continue to this day, as of last week, to continue to be making headlines and part of research studies. If you haven't had a chance to go back and take a look, there are so many studies and things that that the media and the government folks that are fighting against these approaches are using. So the idea of using fear or the takeaway or you need to qualify or let me recommend you are things that consistently get brought up. The pain funnel is another big aspect. So just consider these are risky areas for those of you who may have approaches that have any aspect or any semblance of those types of techniques, okay? All right, so we've given you a couple of reasons to take a look at. There's definitely pros, there's some downside, and again, the current model does have some limited value. I do want to say here, though, the things that we've done for a long time, especially with the admissions interview, have had a lot of value. It's just taking a new look in today's environment. So we don't want to have that continued negative perception, as I just showed you. But we also have to look at resources because a lot of schools are cutting back. There's a lot of question in terms of funding. Students are making choices based on value. So a lot of schools are cutting back, especially in the area of admissions, in terms of how much time and money do we want to spend in this particular area. So again, those are some reasons to adapt. Another is because, of course, students have some expectations, right? They have some needs that have grown beyond the service that we've been able to provide. So the admissions interview, although it's been helpful, there are some reasons, and again, students have a lot to say about that. And a final is the consequences of students who self-advise. So if we aren't doing the admissions interview, Another reason to adapt are those students who aren't going through something meaningful, those people who just do it all on their own. So we talk about all that information is out there, let students do it themselves. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right choice, right? So we're going to talk a little about that. So I think we wanted to do a quick poll here. I'm always a fan of seeing what the group out here thinks.
Absolutely. So why don't I go ahead and launch this poll. Go ahead and vote early and often. And the poll is asking, what do you believe students expect from you? And go ahead and check all of these that apply to you. So is it honesty, expertise, 24/7 access, great service, or is it all of the above? What do you think as far as what do your students expect from you? So go ahead and continue voting. I'll give you a couple more seconds here if you haven't had a chance to get your results in.
It's sort of getting people in the mode of what's going to be happening in November, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and see what you had to say regarding what your students expect from you. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And then let's see what your results say. So it looks like, well, this is interesting, more than half of you believe that they expect all of the above. So honesty, expertise, 24/7 access, and great service. And then the other close finisher was honesty, of course. That lends itself to our mode of transparency in our profession now. Expertise, wanting to be the expert in your area, as well as great service. Both came in at around 44% and 40%. And 24/7 access, interesting. 11% of you believe that that's what students want. And it is something that we're hearing, isn't it, Jean?
It sure is. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for participating. We'll go ahead and take that screen away. All right.
Thank you for playing. All righty. All right. So let's also take a look at retention. And we are big fans as we move forward in the world of admissions. We are huge fans of looking at admissions, not just in terms of getting a student in the door, but getting a student across the stage and into a career that is a great fit, right? And when we take a look at the work that's been done in admissions in the past and the scientific research, just getting someone in the door is no guarantee of staying, obviously. So when you take a look at the retention that is expected and the fall off that happens, the amount of money that is lost from a school that is just focusing on the front end versus how can admissions play a more significant role in getting students to not just start but stay. So we wanted to share this with you in terms of just take a look at the money, follow the money related to retention aspects. All right. So let's talk a little now about how do we move forward now that we've recapped some of the aspects of there are pros and cons, things have worked really well for a long time, but there's enough reasons to take a look at changing. So I'll turn it over to Shannon to walk us through here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jean. And when we think about pre-enrollment advising, what we're really thinking about is that whole idea of, how do we understand or help a student understand where, how they fit within the organization. So what we came up with, or actually there's 5 theories or career theories related to this topic. And when we took a look at there's 2 in particular that we're going to look at, but these 5 theories have been developed by U.S. scholars and are referred to as the Big 5. And so this is what career guidance and counseling professionals use in practice, and as well as the research over the past few decades. So these 5 theories include the theory of work adjustment, Holland's theory of vocational personalities in the work environment, Donald Super's theory of self-concept or through career development, the theory of circumspection and compromise, and then social cognitive career theory as well. So lots of different career theories, and like I said, while we won't be delving into each and every one of these, I would like to take a look at two gentlemen in particular that we focused on their theories to help determine how do we help our students to determine their best fit, and how do we help use these theories in pre-enrollment advising. Much of our approach is attributed to this gentleman right here, Donald Super. And what Super believed is that in each stage, a person has to really think about, the developmental tasks that they have in each stage of life. So you'll see the life rainbow there. So the person considers at every stage what vocational development is going on. And this is important so that as advisors, we can think about the same things. Most importantly, there are three things that we want to help students with pre-enrollment advising in terms of Super's theory. And one of those is the crystallization of tasks. So it's thinking about how do my interests, my skills, and my values relate to my goals and what I want to do. And then there's that idea of specification. So what do we need to do next, or what are the specific things or tasks that we need to help that person determine or identify to move forward? And the final part is implementation, taking those steps to make sure and actualize that these things are happening, so that they're either they're enrolling in school, they're engaging with us, or they're figuring out, if we're not the best fit, then who might be the best fit. So, Super and his life rainbow is really kind of interesting when you think about how we grow and evolve as individuals, and how our students grow and evolve as individuals. Now, John Holland, another one of our pioneers, introduced the vocational personalities in the work environment. So what Holland really suggests is that a person's career interest could be expressed, it is really an expression of somebody's personality. And it can be broken down into 6 different categories. So you have your investigative category, which is your thinkers. You have your artistic category, or your creators. The social category, your helpers. Enterprising, your persuaders. I'm sure that we have a few of those enterprising individuals with us today. As well as our conventional, the organizers. And our realistic folks, the doers. So Holland's theory pretty much states that if we can identify which of your 6 personality types, which of the 6, if you can identify which are your highest scoring ones, and then match them up to an occupation or a career, that there's a greater likelihood of you to have career success and ultimate success moving forward. And this theory has been, it's really had an enormous impact on career development as far as assessments go and research. There are a number of those out there, and there's a lot of validity behind Holland's 6 personality types. Okay, so we really have considered these theories when we talk about determining best fit. And when we think about a career planner actually helping to advise students when it comes to moving forward with achieving their goal, it really is not the result of just one decision, but a series of decisions through the student's lifetime. And they're going to go through the steps with you to determine a number of areas. And when it comes to fit, we want to look at what are the students' interests, what are their skills or abilities, and what are their values, what's important to them, what do they believe in. This is really a critical component in helping the student to really determine what is my fit as far as this goes, because these questions will provide information for making decisions in relation to, is this the right place for me? Is this the right program for me? What am I going to get out of this? So let's take a further look at each of these areas, and then maybe how you might apply this to your role. So when we talk about interests in determining fit, it's really important that a student looks at what is it that I'm interested in doing. When we think about it, the more you enjoy what you do, typically equals greater job satisfaction as far as where you're at and what you're doing. So it's important for students to consider, when we talk about their interests, what are some of their interests related to people, to information, and to things. The ultimate goal is that the student is going to find their path that's consistent with these interests and have a higher level of potential success because they've taken this into consideration. So what might this look like for you as you're applying, how to determine interests? Well, you can start that with your prospective students by asking questions related to their interests, such as, what activities do you enjoy doing most in your work? Or would you prefer working with people, numbers and data, abstract ideas, real-world things, or a combination of them? Okay? And then what activities do you enjoy outside of work? And, this is in particular to work, but then we can also talk about school. And as a matter of fact, there's a number of tools online that schools have used in relation to Holland's code and figuring out, what students' interests are. So this is an example of a community college out there that has taken the Holland Code quiz. I think there's about 40 questions on this, and students go through and indicate their interests. And as they work through all of these questions, what comes at the end is that they have, the school has then linked up what their results show to specific areas in their school that the student might consider as they're thinking about how they fit within the organization. So I think if we just click a slide, click one more time, and then, so this is the results that the students get. So again, based on what the students said that their interests are, and they scored highest in that social area, you can see some of the job titles that would go along with that, such as an educational counselor, school or vocational counselor. So those are some ways that schools are using assessments online to gauge students' interest. But immediately, we can go ahead by asking students, what are some of the things that you enjoy most when it comes to school or to work, so that we can get an idea there. So that's interests and how to apply that, but then let's take a moment to think about looking at skills and what you're good at. Now this is really important to consider, and it's not just what you're good at right now. These can be both natural skills as well as acquired skills. So we want to take a time to create a skills inventory. Think about, what are the things that I'm good at, and those can be hard skills, specific skills developed, such as, maybe you're fluent in a foreign language, or you have computer programming skills. But also there's the soft skills that we want to consider. So your life skills, how you work with a team, what your people skills are like in communication. The good news is putting your skills on paper can really be an eye-opener for the student as far as, hey, these are the natural skills I possess already, and these are the things that I want to work towards. So let's go back to what can we do immediately to use this in our approach. Again, it goes back to questions. Admissions interviews and pre-enrollment advising, more importantly, is all about questions and discovery. So we can simply ask, what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What skills or abilities do you think you need or you currently possess in order to do this job or to be successful here at school? So it gives us an idea of what are some of the criteria that the student is looking for when it comes to what they can demonstrate and showcase during school. Again, there's a number of resources out there. Your free career test is one. It takes about 3 minutes, which is great. It's free. There's no registration necessary. And again, it gives students an idea of, what are some of their interests based on the questions that they're asking. So it's something to think about as you move forward. There's also a book called the StrengthsFinder 2.0 that includes quizzes and assessments that you can look at further as well for helping students to determine their skill level and how that applies to fit when it comes to your organization. Now the final area for determining fit, really it requires that we help our students to explore their values and the things that are really important to them. And that could include achievement or status, autonomy. So what we want to make sure of is that when we look at it, we look at the two different types of values, intrinsic values and extrinsic values. So what's important to me as a student? And then extrinsically, how do my values align with the school or the institution that I'm considering? How do my values align with the program of choice? Which ultimately lines up with how does this align with my future career? And it's really important to consider those things, because when we understand our values and how they fit within the organization, there's more likelihood for greater success moving forward. So again, some typical questions, what type of lifestyle are you seeking? What work environment do you prefer? Or actually, what kind of school environment do you prefer? And how does stability factor into your decision? But there's a number of assessments out there, and this one is actually from the University of Illinois, that helps students to understand, again, what are the things that I value? What are most important to me? And how does that align with me fitting in here at this school or this college or university? So just another tool out there. Again, there's a lot of tools and things out there for you to consider. One of the things that I do caution is just knowing what the research behind those tools are and the validity of those. So to make sure that they really are giving you the results that you need from those assessments, or actually that your students needing, and then how do you help the student understand what those results are saying? So a little bit more on that, but that's our FIT triangle and the importance of thinking about our interests, skills, and values. And just in case you needed another reason, the First Lady, for a little bit longer anyway, Michelle Obama she's really kind of taken the whole idea of college and career readiness and fit as a cause. She launched the Reach Higher initiative in 2009, which was meant to support President Obama's North Star goal of the U.S. once again becoming one. Having the most college graduates by the year 2020. And so Mrs. Obama has really worked with a number of school districts throughout the country, as well as counselors, to help with increasing the number of post-secondary options for our students. So it's not just, hey, you're going to go to a four-year college or university, but really looking at what else might fit better for some of our students out there. She's also announced a near-peer mentoring college challenge, which she has really kind of charged community colleges and additional, institutes of higher learning, no matter who you are, to help increase and enhance experiences for students across the country. So those are just some of the things that she's doing to help give our students, our high school students, more options, but that even trickles on to our adult population as well, as what's out there for them and how can we help to make an impact when it comes to alternatives for pursuing your post-secondary education options.
Fantastic. And I think just there in and of itself, if we all just pause for a moment, because Shannon just took us through a whole master's level course, I think, and 10 minutes.
I might need a drink of water.
There you go. You might need some water. So the idea here, though, is as you look at what the framework for the admissions interview has been, and you look at the potential of all these tools and a solid approach that's based on proven science that shows fit versus just getting them into school, that alone causes us to think more deeply about what could we be doing to help our students beyond the aspects of probing and obstacle resolution and those types of things. So what else could we be doing? And we're going to take it even further than that, because even though you've probably got some ideas floating around in your head right now and say, here's how I can modify, here's how I can tweak, I want to give you something else to think about. And that's the way that students want to communicate with us. Right? What are their preferences? And right now, so much is done via phone. Some of you, I was excited to see, are using other alternative forms of communication in terms of video, which might be, FaceTime or something similar to what we're doing here with a GoToMeeting, cyber service, any Skype, FaceTime, whatever it might be. However, for those of you who are doing admissions interviews and who registered for the webinar today, 83% of you are saying the primary method is actually face-to-face. And I look at this and say, what a fantastic opportunity, right? Because the research shows that the information is out there. And one of the biggest obstacles is that students don't necessarily know how to deal with that information. They don't know how to process that. They can't connect the dots. So they need you. They need you to help them make sense of all the stuff that's out there. They, however, may not want to do it face-to-face. They, however, may not want to do it over the phone. So what we can do is take a new look at not just the service we're providing in terms of pre-enrollment advising, which is a new way of doing things that offers more value, but how can we actually do that pre-enrollment advising in a different way, or expanding the options in terms of how we do it. So one of the things that we've been testing for almost 2 years now is actually taking pre-enrollment advising and sticking it out there for students to experience it on their own. So a couple of specifics on my guidance coach, which is, again, 24/7 pre-enrollment advising. So again, this is data that's based on our experience of working with students that want to experience something new, something different, something that explores fit, but also I want it when I want it. And I want to do it from my phone, which is what we're seeing with most people. And it has assessments in there. It has things that are built in, so they don't have to look for it. They don't have to seek these things out. They can actually take them if they want them right there built in. Again, when we talk about the world of compliance and, the media just making such a case in terms of the processes that are used are distasteful or misrepresenting institutions or people or students not perhaps understanding, it's a proven coaching process that is used based on these theories, right? Based on what actually happens in terms of guidance counseling. And it's endorsed by compliance. So whatever you choose to do, just make sure you've got those blessings from your compliance team, your legal experts. And again, when we talk about resources, that so many admissions offices are overwhelmed. You're spending an hour and a half meeting with these students, which is an admirable thing to do. However, there's less admissions people out there trying to do more with less. So having someone who's 24/7 or a resource actually ends up being like someone who's a member of your team at the same time. And ultimately, the value for the prospective student is they've gone through a coaching process and they walk away with a better understanding of who am I, what are my values, do these align with the organization, what are my interests, what are my skill sets, is this the right program for me? Like, what an amazing thing they walk away with, and they have a plan. And the thing I will tell you is they're going to get that plan even if they determine that your school may not be the best fit, because the idea here is we want to make sure they stay. They're not just coming and staying for a week, that they're actually moving forward. So some of the data that we've seen and the experience we've had over the last couple of years is students love the ability to be able to do that. But they also love the ability to connect with you face-to-face still, believe it or not. And it's just a timing thing. They may not want to do it initially, but after they start going through a process, and it's pre-enrollment advising, and they get things out of it, they show up for appointments, by the way. They do come to see you, and they want someone to actually be a partner, and they're referring at much higher rates because it's a service now versus them feeling like they're being interrogated or manipulated in some way. So again, something to consider. And I think the really important thing here is, as a result of this, what can you walk away and do for yourself? How do you prepare? So I'm going to turn it back to Shannon.
Absolutely. So, and that's really what it's all about. What can I do to prepare myself to better serve my students? And I'm always interested in hearing what ideas you have as far as what do you think at this point in time you need to better prepare yourself to meet the needs of your students, to help them determine fit and to be really successful when it comes to pre and enrollment advising. So go ahead and shoot me some of your ideas via chat. I'd love to hear those and then share them with the group as well. One of the things that we're big proponents of is additional training. So again, it leads to your growth as a professional as well as your own development. And so you can take a look at how do we enhance training internally. And some of the things that you'll need to think about is modifying that current process so that you're adapting pre-enrollment advising techniques. And when you when you think about that, what might need to be modified in the current process? Language changes. Again, staying away from anything that could be misconstrued or perhaps viewed as negative, given that what we've seen in the environment. But just what are the tweaks that we need to make? And part of that is discovering a student's interests, skills, and values, and how does that apply as far as fit within your organization goes, fit within their program of choice, and ultimately, finding the right fit after graduation. Absolutely, we want to make sure that the training is compliant, so keeping that in mind, I think your compliance teams will be very happy with that. But looking at the big picture, so as an organization, it's about retention. How do we get those students to stay and retain them so that they complete and they graduate? Externally, we offer our Enrollmatch training program, which, by the way, is the first and only training program that's legally endorsed and approved for alignment with federal accreditation standards and agencies. Enrollmatch also gives you the opportunity to really look at the specific techniques that we share in pre-enrollment advising. So it is a process. It provides a framework for pre-enrollment advising, as well as an opportunity for self-discovery and greater awareness for participants who go through the Enrollmatch program. Beyond that, there's also the idea, and something that we really feel is very important, of perhaps creating a membership organization and a place where admissions professionals working in career education, whether it be at a community college, a career college, or a university that offers career-focused programs, to come together along with our school counselor and guidance colleagues and provide that link. This is an opportunity. This doesn't currently exist, and so it's something that Jean and I feel is very important to offer, and we're working hard to lay the framework for this. But it gives us the opportunity to keep and establish best practices when it comes to determining fit, pre-enrollment advising, and serving our students. And then perhaps there would be credentialing associated with that, and that's something that we are really we feel is very important, is that continued education piece, and then the proof of, hey, we've got this. I can prove that I am trained to meet a student or to help a student through the pre-enrollment advising process. But I'm always curious to learn a little bit more about, what do you think? Is this something that you believe would be a benefit to you as an admissions professional? And if so, what are other services that you believe would be important to offer through a membership organization such as this? And again, I'd love to get your thoughts through the chat, and certainly we can share those. But it's a great takeaway for us too as we continue to build this framework and this organization.
Fantastic. And Shannon, I'm actually taking a look at some of the responses that we received. There in terms of their ideas on how to move forward, their thoughts on member benefits, those types of things. So ideas on moving, I think the theme here is, without a background in counseling, how do we put these approaches into our training? Mm-hmm. And so how does this approach differ based on that limitation? Mm-hmm. So if they're not licensed counselors, how does this approach differ?
Yeah, and I think that, in my experience, Jean, one of the things that helps, what makes this different as far as within the limitation, is that this approach, the pre-enrollment advising approach, is really focused on, the student and getting to know the student and understanding them from these different areas, so that you can break it down into those 3 different areas of, let's understand what your interests are, let's understand your skills, and what you currently have, what you're currently really good at, and then what we want to build on, and then let's take into consideration your values. So in this approach, we need to understand how to ask those specific questions, as well as how do we help our students to understand through that information what that might link to, and how that might or may not work within our organization. So that's really a part of it, is that we're working to determine the student's best fit, and mostly that may perhaps mean at some point in time that we discover it's not our institution, but we can help them create a plan to find what is going to work best for them.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And I think at this point we'll turn it over to Beth, because in summary we've talked about again the value of the admissions interview technique, and then some of the pros and cons there. We've talked about the reasons to adapt, of course, and moving forward with the PEA in terms of the specific areas that Shannon mentioned and what we can do, and tools that we can take a look at, and how we can apply some of those aspects, and then how we prepare ourselves. So Beth, we'll turn it over to you for Q&A.
Great. Thank you, ladies. I see that we already have a bunch of questions coming in, so please keep those coming, and we will address those. In the meantime, while you are thinking of your questions and typing those into the chat box in the questions portal, I want to go through some of our upcoming events. We can move to the next slide. You can see here we'll be on the road quite a bit through November. So if there's something going on in an area where you are, we'd love for you to come out, see Dr. Jean, Vince, Shannon, Andy, and others from our team. You can see we'll be all over the place, from California to Kentucky, right here in Illinois, Florida. So come on out. I want to point out that our next Enroll Match workshop that we host in Chicago quarterly is going to go on October 19th through the 21st. Day one, for those who don't know, is designed for basically anyone who works with students. So faculty, financial aid, like I said, anybody working with students, you are more than welcome, and this is a really awesome experience. You'll learn about how to understand yourself better, how to communicate better with students and people in general, and then you'll leave feeling completely empowered. So I recommend that you join us. And then days 2 and 3 are for those of you who work in admissions. You'll want to stay as we deep dive into things like the pre-enrollment advisement approach. Our early bird rates end this Friday, so sign up before it's too late, because the week will end before you know it. And Shannon, do we want to go through some of these questions out loud?
I think that would be perfect. So, wow, we've got quite a few that have come in. Thanks so much for your curiosity and your questions. The first question that I'm seeing is, oh, this is interesting. So, how does pre-enrollment advising work, or how, actually it says, sorry, it's a very small print. I think it's time for me to get glasses. So, I love this approach. How do I convince my boss, who looks at the numbers, to use pre-enrollment advising? Spoken like a true admissions professional.
Yeah, it's similar to another one that I saw in terms of the evidence on more enrollments and retention. Mm-hmm. So just from again, I'm going to go with the org development side of me. This is a change. This is a change from something that has been in place for some of your schools. It's a change either way. So if you are currently using an admissions interview as part of your strategy, the big change here is different questions, assessments, philosophy, and that's going to take different kinds of training, because once you have all that information, what do you do with it? And when you have that information, the idea here and the concept is to help that student make a decision that is in their best interest. So it's a shift in terms of doing what's best for the student. Now, I don't want to say it's a shift completely, because hopefully we've always done that. But the idea is, if this is not the right fit from a business perspective, which some of your bosses may be looking at, of course, is let's get these students in school that are good fits. And many of you have programs that are fantastic and would be the right fit. And the fact that you help the student discover those things is amazing, even if it isn't the right fit. You know, they're going to refer other people to you to go through this process. And hopefully, if they're not right, maybe their friend is, right? So the ROI actually comes in, A, more students showing up because I'm hearing music.
Oh. Well, that's interesting.
Nice. So we could dance as we go. Sounds like we're on hold. Sorry about that. Not sure where that's coming from. But the idea here is to make sure that the student is the right fit. If they're not, let them go. They're going to drop out anyway. So the amount of money that gets spent sometimes on those dropouts, when you think of the faculty time, the processing of paperwork, you're going to see some big savings there. I feel like I'm being pulled off stage.
I feel like we're at the Emmy Awards and we have just we've gone over our time for this speech.
Thank you everyone. Yes, I'm done. There we go. All right.
That's our proverbial hook, is it?
There you go.
Well, we do have a few more questions. I know that we've got quite a few of you that have had the opportunity to stay with us for a while. So, Jean, would you like to tackle a few more of these?
Yeah, let's go right. Let's keep going.
I would love that. Let's take a look at, I see, what if our assessment of career choice, well, and I think, Jean, you kind of added this just now, is what happens if our assessment of career choice drastically differs from what the student has expressed? And again, it goes back to it's about the student and their fit, and making sure that we're doing right by them and look at the goodwill that we can offer. Even if they don't choose to attend our school, we still have the opportunity to provide a service that's meaningful for them in figuring out what is right for them. So,
and I'll add here, Shannon, that it's also important that we're not just using one tool, right? So Shannon mentioned earlier that the idea of making sure that it's a valid, reliable instrument, there's things out there that ask students all kinds of questions, and they're designed with a different intent. They could be for lead generation or trying to suck a student in. That's not what we're talking about here. This is about valid, reliable tools that have been proven and are being used out there to actually help students. So if you're using something that's related to career choice, I would suggest that you use other tools or other questions that coordinate with that. Secondly, if you don't happen to offer the program that the student selects, you may have other data points that help them figure out that it might be a different area. And you can continue to share what you have, what you have available. So I just want to make sure we're not putting ourselves in a box of, oh, they took this test and we don't have that program, so goodbye. There's other things that need to be considered along with that.
Absolutely. The other thing too, Jean, is if you think about Super's Life Rainbow, we evolve constantly. So it's important that we think about how our interests are going to change throughout time as well.
So here's another interesting question. With the pre-enrollment advising approach, is this something that has been brought up to be added to our website for students to utilize or get to? Or how would students access it? Great question. So there, and I can speak specifically to like the My Guidance Coach, there's actually 9 different ways for a prospective student to get to that. But yes, the intent is that you could use it while you're sitting with a student to walk them through the questioning algorithm, to collect their information, to have them take the assessment. So you can do it with them, face-to-face, over the phone, via GoTo or Skype or FaceTime. But students who prefer 24/7 or who haven't been engaged, you can also send them a link that would take them directly to this service. And it would be, it would look like your school. It has your logo on it, your colors, all that fun stuff, your information. And they could access it from your websites, from an e-blast, a text blast, from anywhere you want to put that link for. It could be something that you post in social media. So there's a lot of different ways for students to get to it. So I think that's a great question.
I see another question here, Jean. How do you see the PEA working with the interview process? And is there a model that is currently working? Mm-hmm. Interesting. So if I may jump in here, we currently have a model that we utilize through our EnrollMatch program. It's also embedded into the MGC software that is working and working well. And it incorporates the idea of pre-enrollment advising, looking for fit as you're working with the student, and ultimately helping the student figure out, is this the right place for me? If not, what do I need to do to get to where I want to be? So that's something that we see in our enrollment training program, and what we've seen for our clients who are using both EnrollMatch and My Guidance Coach.
Right, and I think the importance when we talk about the traditional interview, it's not like everything has to be thrown away. We just completely lose the whole thing, because a framework, as we showed earlier in terms of the pros of the admissions interview, is that it still allows for that information, that information gathering. It still allows for that relationship building, that trust building, what students expect of you, giving compliant and complete information. Think of the interview as the framework that still needs to exist. However, pre-enrollment advising is about adding different kinds of questions, helping, offering them assessments, and then helping with all this information, helping that student make an informed decision based on all of those things. So hopefully that answers that question.
And I know there was another question that asked, are you suggesting that we take the one-on-one interview away altogether? And I think it's really about offering options to the student, because we know that not everybody wants that face-to-face interview. So what can we do to help the student feel comfortable and to connect with them on their level initially, and then take it from there? So, okay. Well, we are right at 1 hour,
yeah.
12 o'clock noon here in Chicago. So I see that we had one final question come through, and I just want to throw that out there. Let's see what this is. Again, my.
So what I'm seeing, Shannon, is one of the challenges some of our programs face is not being able to provide as clear a career outcome, such as a BBA, as other more specific career-focused programs like film production. Can the PEA help prospective students find a path with and through a program? So it's about a clear career outcome versus a specific career choice.
And I think that absolutely, there's actually a plan that, in many cases when you're working through pre-enrollment advising, it's about helping the student to uncover their plan and determine what that path might be. So there may be some steps in there that aren't related to choosing a program, but it's important that we help the student to consider all of the things that they need to manage in order to achieve the goal that they've set for themselves.
Yep. All right. And one last one, sorry, they just keep coming, but I just want to make sure we get all these. How do you see the PEA working with a career training school? So we have a small number of hands-on training programs. Nearly all of our students know whether or not they are a fit. They're not looking for classroom programs. So I'll just jump in. So The PEA, and again, a lot of the work that we've done and the testing we've done has been in the career college or career-specific training programs. So although students do come forward with an understanding, and many will self-select out of the gate, hey, here's the program I'm looking for, and some of that is because that's how they're shopping, right? They're online, all the information's out there, they've done their research, they've talked to their friends. That's part of why we're even having the conversation, is they don't need us in the same way. The idea here, though, is to help reinforce that decision with additional assessments, additional questions, because although they may like a certain program, does it match up with their values? Does it match up with the environment they're looking to learn in? And so it's looking at the complete picture of fit beyond just the program.
Yeah, and if I could add just with that is, the student may have skills that they believe, hey, these are things that I'm naturally good at, but they don't necessarily enjoy putting those into place. And so when you can have that alignment of all three areas, typically that translates into greater success working through a program and beyond once the student walks away. So we're really helping the student to determine, hey, is this going to work for me when I think about my career outside of this?
Mm-hmm. Great. So I think with that, Sharon, the other questions that are coming, we promise we will answer these when we get offline, but
absolutely,
keep sending them in. But for the rest of you who've joined us today, thank you so much. And as Shannon and Beth have mentioned, this is being recorded, so you will absolutely get a link to this to share with your colleagues. And please reach out to us if there's anything else we can do. And when you get out of the webinar today, a quick survey is going to pop up. Just tell us what your thoughts are, what other topics you might be interested in, if you'd want to add that, and if there's anything else that we can provide to you. All right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for your time. Yeah.
And we'll look forward to connecting with you soon.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.